Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to keep talking about my current project of coding the combat system for a viewer's game. In particular, I would like to talk about some mistakes that I made and how I have corrected them. The person whose game this is going to be and I exchange messages occasionally, and in a recent message he pointed out that I had misinterpreted his instructions in a couple of places and told me sort of what I should have done. And I also noticed a mistake that I'd made. Actually, I think I was recording the last video when I noticed it. So there's three basic mistakes, two of them fairly small and one of them required sort of a fairly big bit of rewriting. So let's go through the small ones. So in the attacks array, which gives the details of the attacks that the monsters might use, I had two extra slots compared to what I have now. I had a slot for what attribute is added to the attack roll, and I had a slot for what attribute is added to the damage if the attack hits. And neither of those were necessary because there's a general rule, and it's to do with the range, and I already have the range written down. If the range is close, then it uses the strong attribute both to add to the attack roll and to add to the damage. The only attack that doesn't take place at close range, or doesn't have a maximum range of close, doesn't do damage because it's the buzz attack, which is a sort of special attack which can knock over its targets rather than do damage to them. But I think the general rule is that you use sneaky instead if there were attacks of that type that did damage. But the point is that because we have the range, and because the close range always means use the strong attribute for both, well, we don't need those extra slots. They were redundant, and so I've now gotten rid of them. And if you compare this, if you compare this array to what it looked like in a previous video, you'll see that it's now smaller. Another small change that I made was that when a monster attacks a player character, I was reducing the attack roll by the target's sneaky attribute, but I was also reducing damage by the target's sneaky attribute. And that latter wasn't meant to happen. Sneaky is only meant to affect the attack roll, not the damage. So I just got rid of the line that added the damage. There's no point showing you that. It's just there was a line where I added the sneaky attribute and reduced the damage by that much, and we just had to get rid of those lines. Now, the third change was a bit more extensive than the others, and it's to do with the buzz attack, which is, in the fiction of the game, the giant mosquitoes sort of flap their wings really fast, and this creates a wind, and that might knock over its target. And I had them selecting a single target, rolling to hit, and then only if it hit did the target have to roll to stand up. And that was wrong, I was told, in two ways. One, it affects everyone in range. So there may be more than one person who has to roll, or character that has to roll. And secondly, there's no attack roll. It's the only roll is that the targets roll to stay on their feet. So that wasn't a matter of sort of getting rid of a couple of bits of data or getting rid of a couple of lines. I actually changed the whole way that this part of the program, which deals with the enemy's attacks, was laid out. You might notice there's an extra passage now called Buzz, which deals with the buzz attack, but there were a few changes in this, the sort of main part of the system as well. While I was making this change, I also got rid of the effect of a long success, which is a very good roll, the sort of thing that other systems might call a critical hit or a critical success. I had it that the target has to roll to stay standing in the event of a long success on a normal attack, on a non-buzz attack. And I got rid of that because there was already an effect of a long success, and that is that it does extra damage, as we'll see when we go through it. So I got rid of that at the same time, and so the code is sort of basically the same, but I've sort of cut and paste sections into different bits, and so it's worth going through that. So let's do that. Let's spend the rest of the video doing that. So here we have the choose attack screen, which is where the enemy will choose a random attack. It'll see if anyone is within range of the attack. If not, it'll move. If it chooses an attack that it can't do, that's a sort of a mistake, and it chooses again, so it chooses from among the attacks that it can do. And the only change that we've made is here. This is the place where they've chosen an attack. It's one of the attacks they can choose, and we have someone in range. Normally what would happen is we just go to choose target because we had a single sort of flow for buzz targets, buzz attacks and non-buzz attacks. But now we have to sort of split it up. We basically say if attacks Y2 is equal to -1, attacks Y2 is to do with what's added to the damage. I think, let's have a look. Attacks Y2. No, sorry, attacks something 2 is the basic damage if the attack hits. And -1 indicates it's a special attack that doesn't do damage, which is only, in this case, relevant to buzz. So if that is the case, we go to buzz. And if it's not the case, we go to choose target, which was where we were going before. Buzz works slightly differently because of the fact that it can affect more than one target. It doesn't have a single target. So to allow for that, we have a for loop that goes from 0 to com_max. If Z is 0, then we're talking about the player character. If it's a positive number, we're talking about that numbered companion. We then check if that particular companion or the player character is alive. Well, the player character is always alive, but the companions, of course, can be there either there never was a companion in that slot, or there was one but they've died, or perhaps left in some other way that we won't be coding because we're only coding the combat system. So how do we deal with that? Well, we have a variable Z3, we set it to 0. Sorry, it's having trouble. There we go. We set Z3 to 0. We're going to set it to 1 if this character is alive. If Z is equal to 0, we automatically set it to 1 because the player character, if we're at this stage, the player character must be alive, because when the player character dies, we automatically immediately end the game. So if we've got to this screen, we can know that the player character is still alive. If Z is not 0, then that means it's a companion. Then we look at com_Z2, which is the slot where we store the hit points of each companion, or of companion number Z. And if that's greater than 0, then Z3 again is set to 1. And then if Z3 is set to 1, well, that means that that is a live character, and therefore we have to see whether they're in range, and if they are in range, they have to roll. So we include find distance. Now this is a new passage, but it's not new code. I've just moved it here because we use it in two different places. We use it in this one, in Buzz, but we also use it when we're choosing the target. And it just, I've gone through all this code before, but it just finds the distance from character Z, player character's side character Z, if that makes sense, the distance between them and the acting monster. So we find that distance. Where are we? We find that distance, we store it in X, And then if x is less than or equal to attacks y1 times 2 plus 1. Well, attacks y1 is the range. So 0 is close, 1 is mid, and 2 is far. But because 1, like mid doesn't have a range of 1 range band, it has a range of 3, and 2 has a range of 5, and close has a range of 1. So it's not 0, 1, 2, it's 1, 3, 5. We get to that number that we need by multiplying by 2 and adding 1. So if the range, x, is less than or equal to the maximum range of this attack, which is that one, then we have to roll. Now this is all this is all code that I've shown you before, so I won't go through it line by line. Sorry, it actually tests whether that player already is prone as well. If they're already prone, we don't do it. And if they are not prone, then we roll and add the strong attribute and see if we can get at least 7. So we've already talked about this code. I've just sort of cut and pasted it into a different place. So that's how the buzz attack works. And then the normal attacks work pretty much as before. We choose a target who is within range. We roll to attack. We give a message that says, yep, you've rolled a 3 and a 5 plus your strong score of whatever, minus their sneaky score of whatever for a total of whatever. And then we have different results depending on what happens. There's a long failure. They can injure themselves. I'm going through this quickly because we've dealt with the code before. Again, it's just sort of rearranged. It's put in a different place. Otherwise, so a long failure means the enemy injures themselves. A failure means nothing happens. A success or a long success means damage, with a long success meaning extra damage. In particular, you add the monster's strong score twice rather than once. And then we apply that damage, and we might have a game over if it's the player character who's been killed, or we might have to say, that was on companion 1 or 2, let's say. Companion 1 or 2 has now been killed. And so we have basically the same code. It's just a lot simpler, and it's been split into 2. And so having done that, I have dealt with most of the major mistakes. I haven't dealt with sort of weapons that behave in a different way. The person who is making the game told me that there are some weapons that target more than one enemy. That's to do with when the player character's side is doing their attack, because I've coded it that everything is an attack on one target, and they've told me there are some grenades and things don't target multiple enemies, but we'll sort of code that when we get to it. Basically, we're now sort of caught up. I've fixed the mistakes that I had, and we can get on with what I was going to do next, which is basically coding more of when the player character or a companion attacks. So that will be coming up in future videos, but for now, I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.